They want to know how an inmate was able to get a gun, shoot and kill a food service worker at Smith State Prison before turning the gun on himself.
At about 4:30 a.m. on Sunday, June 16th, 2024, tragedy struck Smith State Prison in rural Glenville, Georgia. Inmate Jaydrekus Hart suddenly opened fire inside the prison kitchen, killing 24-year-old Aramark food service worker Orion Shavia Grace and then shooting himself.
Everybody on your doors, on your doors, on your doors.
Grace, a single mother of two from nearby Statesboro, had started her new job in the prison cafeteria just months earlier.
Good on that. Hey, this one is special. Doesn't get that salad, doesn't get the vegetables.
By dawn, both victims were dead, and the prison was on lockdown. In the days that followed, investigators would uncover a secret relationship between Hart and Grace.
GDC investigators say Hart and Grace had a personal relationship.
And a suicide note left by Hart.
The department also said it found a suicide note that appears to have been left by the inmate.
But many questions about why this killing happened may never be fully answered. 24-year-old Orion Grace seemed to have a promising life ahead of her. She was the proud mother of a 1-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. Determined to build a better future, Grace had taken a new job preparing meals in the Smith State Prison kitchen. According to official reports, she began working there in January 2024, commuting daily from her home in Statesboro. Her family says she was saving money to go to nursing school, hopeful to become a nurse after her prison job.
She'll work 11 days straight, 14 days straight, just to make money, to make sure she could provide for her kids.
By June, she was still adjusting to this unusual workplace, surrounded by armed guards and inmates, but clearly focused on supporting her family. She did not know that her path would tragically cross with an inmate at work. Smith State Prison is a close-security men's prison in Glenville, Georgia. Built in 1993, it houses over 1,500 inmates and operates various work programs, including a large kitchen run by the Aramark food service contractor. The facility features multiple housing units, administration buildings, and fortified fences. Guards patrol watchtowers and entry points. Visitors and staff pass through metal detectors at the front gate. In theory, everyone entering must be scanned for weapons. But the prison also has a rear service gate used for deliveries, which has not used the same metal detecting equipment. Food and supplies often come in through that back gate, meaning it must be carefully checked to stop contraband. In 2023, Smith State Prison had already faced serious security challenges. Just months earlier, in October 2023, an inmate killed correctional officer Robert Clark during a transport. A shocking second fatal staff attack in less than a year for the facility. Earlier still, the prior warden was arrested in 2023 as part of a corruption and contraband investigation. In February 2023, the Georgia State Inspector General reported that $7 million worth of contraband had been seized statewide, with Smith State notably linked to a major trafficking ring.
Life in Smith, you know what I mean?
It was into this tense environment that Grace walked on her first day in January 2024, and where she would work that fateful June morning. Jaydrekus Hart was a 34-year-old inmate serving a lengthy sentence at Smith State Prison. He had been convicted of voluntary manslaughter and aggravated battery in Carroll County, Georgia, and was given a 20-year term. Official records show his maximum release date as June 2043. By June 2024, Hart was nearly a year into this sentence. He had earned a place on the kitchen detail, working alongside Grace in the prison cafeteria. Inmates chosen for kitchen work are usually those trusted to handle tasks outside their cells, under the supervision of guards. Little in Hart's record marked him as especially dangerous beyond his conviction, but investigators would later learn he had been deeply entangled in the prison's underground networks. Testimony in a Georgia court revealed that a contraband gun had been circulating among inmates. and Hart was one of those who handled it in the months before June 16th. On the day of the shooting, Hart used the weapon to kill the woman he knew, and then took his own life. At the time of the shooting, Hart was still in his early 30s and far from his release. He had no known prior history of attacking prison staff. His actions that morning appeared to come out of the blue, but the suicide note and their secret relationship suggest it was a crime with a very personal motive. Early on June 16th, prison life at Smith State began as usual. Guards finished the night shift, and the morning crew took over. Grace arrived in the kitchen just before 4:30 a.m. to start serving breakfast. Along with her was Inmate Hart, who had kitchen duties that morning. Suddenly, without any warning, Hart pulled a gun and fired. Grace was struck by multiple shots and collapsed on the spot. Within moments, officers and emergency medical personnel rushed to the scene. Grace was pronounced dead at the scene of the shooting. Prison officials say Hart then turned the gun on himself. He was seriously wounded, removed from the scene, and taken to a nearby hospital, where he later died from his injuries. Around 4:30 a.m., the entire prison system in Georgia was placed on lockdown. Smith State officials cancelled all visitations and alerted GDC special investigators. Local authorities were called in to secure the scene. On the stainless counter, investigators find a folded note, written in neat blue ink. "Ari, I told you nobody else gets your smile. If I can't see it, nobody will. I love you. Forgive me." Officers began interviewing eyewitnesses and reviewing surveillance tapes. But the main focus was on the victims, Grace and Hart, and what had driven Hart to open fire. Grace's sudden death has left her family and community in agony. In heartfelt interviews, her mother, DeShonda Hagins, has been openly angry and grief-stricken.
I'm really in disbelief of the fact that it was even a firearm in the facility. My child is dead, and it's no explanation for a firearm to be inside of a prison. Why didn't they search him when he left his dorm? Why didn't they search him before he came into the cafeteria? Why was none of those things done?
Hagins told reporters that she had to learn about her daughter's murder from inmates posting on social media.
Inmates were going through social media, looking on her social media to find people related to her.
Word spread because prisoners with contraband phones were bragging about it online. She said Smith State Prison failed to protect her daughter and expressed frustration that investigators seem more interested in Grace's private life than in the gun that killed her.
Regardless of anything, she was a mother. She loved her kids. She was a daughter. She was a sister. Like, she has family. She had a heart. She wasn't a bad person. Who hasn't made bad decisions and stuff? That don't mean you deserve to die. Why didn't they protect her? Why? They need to put things in place and make sure the prisons are being ran correctly so that no other mother has to go through this, no other wife, no other sister has to go through this.
Hagins is left with Grace's Statesboro home that she says was destroyed when the GDC investigators allegedly searched it on Monday.
They destroyed my daughter's house. They took trash out of the dumpster in her apartment complex. All my grandchildren's stuff was in there, and they opened those trash bags up, left old food, trash, dirty diapers, all that stuff in my daughter's home.
When asked about Grace's relationship with Hart, Hagins snapped back, "What does that have to do with having a gun to kill my child?" In other words, she wanted answers about security failures, not to cast blame on her daughter.
What does that have to do with an inmate having a gun to kill my child?
And Hagins wants the Department of Corrections to focus on that. How the gun got into a maximum security prison where some of the most violent state convicts stay.
The family also mourns the loss of a mother for the two little children. Grace's co-workers describe her as a loving parent who worked hard to support her kids. In the wake of the shooting, her children faced a future without her love and guidance. Friends and relatives have held vigils and shared memories online. The grief her family feels is raw and profound, magnified by the fact that her death was so senseless. Her community in the Statesboro is rallying to support the children, but many are asking the same question as Hagins. How could this have been allowed to happen? As more information has emerged, it has become painfully clear that the shooting was not just a random act, but the predictable result of a series of security breakdowns. A handgun had been thrown over the prison fence in the summer of 2023 and passed among inmates until Hart shot Grace. One inmate received the package with the gun sometime between June 30 and July 10, 2023. That inmate then smuggled it into the kitchen, passing it to another inmate who later passed it to Hart, entrusting him to hold on to it. By early January 2024, prisoners were already snapping photos of the gun on contraband phones and sending them to others. The prison system only tracked down this intelligence on June 13, 2024, just 3 days before the murder-suicide. In other words, the Department of Corrections had known for days that a pistol was hidden inside Smith State, but they did not locate or remove it in time. It is truly alarming that a loaded firearm ended up inside. Knowing a gun was concealed in the kitchen area, the system should have been on high alert. Yet the criminals who brought it in and kept it moving were not caught. The gun was inside the prison, and they knew it, but nothing stopped it. This case leaves a haunting legacy. Orion Grace was a young woman who posed no threat. She went to work each day to provide for her children. She should never have died on a prison kitchen floor. Instead, her life was ended by someone she apparently cared about. Her story is a grim reminder that even places designed for maximum security can be pierced by violence when people inside disregard the rules. Georgia authorities have taken notice. Governor Brian Kemp announced a comprehensive review of the state's prison system in the wake of this and other violent incidents. The goal is to identify and fix the gaps that allowed something so horrific to occur. Prison officials themselves say that $7 million in contraband had been removed from state prisons in recent years and high-profile trafficking rings broken up. Yet clearly more remains to be done to keep staff safe. For the public, the moral is stark. An intimate relationship and a hidden gun combined in the worst way. In a prison environment, love can become poisonous if combined with desperation and lack of hope. Investigators will spend months untangling why Hart did what he did, but the outline is already clear. The system failed. Warnings went unheeded, and a promising life was lost. As one grieves for Grace, questions linger. How many more warnings will it take? How can a young mother be so vulnerable at work? The answers may take time, but the facts remain. On June 16, 2024, failures at multiple levels led to a preventable murder-suicide. Orion Grace's family now faces an empty space where she once stood. And Smith State Prison is left to reckon with the fact that those entrusted to safeguard its halls did not keep her safe. I hope this story helps you recognize warning signs and encourage you to seek help or offer support before it's too late. I'll see you in the next episode of Crime of Passion. Thank you for watching.
But civil rights advocates say they want to know how a gun got into the prison in the first place.
This was the tipping point right here. I've briefly spoken with the sister of Miss Grace, and they are understandably upset.
The GDC says it appears the two were in a personal relationship. The Corrections Department says it has recovered the gun used. It's now working to learn how the firearm got into the prison to begin with.
I don't think they've ever had anything like this happen before inside of a facility.
Brian Randolph is with the Human and Civil Rights Coalition of Georgia. He tells me he actually contacted the GDC last year, telling them he heard a gun was in the prison.
So we were tipped off in May of last year of a possible weapon that had been dropped off via a drone.
He says he sent this text message to GDC's general counsel, telling her exactly what he was told.
We never heard anything else about it.
We reached out to the GDC asking them about this. They said, quote, "That was investigated by our Office of Professional Standards and no leads were developed." Randolph argues GDC should have tried harder.
I guess, my question is, the next time when they get another one in, how many more people are gonna get killed besides work too.
Advocates believe the violence inside Smith State Prison is caused in part by understaffing. Randolph believes this latest incident will likely only make matters worse when it comes to hiring.
Nobody's going to go and work in these places.
This is the second staff death at Smith State Prison in less than a year. You may remember back in October, an inmate assaulted a corrections officer with a homemade weapon.